Hi, this is Neil with another screencast, and this one I want to talk about using iTunes as an MP3 converter and walking you through the functionality that can do. iTunes is essentially has five different functions. One, as a standard jukebox, you can create playlists. You can look at stuff that was recently added. You can obviously make Christmas playlists and things like that. So obviously it's a jukebox. Second, it does rip CDs. So as you put a CD in, it connects to the CD database and will pull the album title off that information, and you can rip that content onto your computer. You can also burn CDs. Fourth is access to the iTunes store with loads of content, both free, lots of free content, particularly the podcasts and the iTunes U, as well as a file converter. So iTunes can convert 5 different file formats, and we'll find that under the iTunes preferences and this import settings right here, we can see the 5 different file formats that it can convert: AAC, AAF, Apple Lossless, WAV, and MP3. If you go from an MP3 up to a WAV, it will not increase the quality of the file, but there are some programs that only can recognize WAV formats. For instance, Reason. The sampler in Reason can only use WAV files. So if you download a sample off the internet that's an MP3, you can convert it to a WAV. It will still sound exactly the same, but it will be in a format that the program can understand. One of the first things that you need to do is set up so you can find out what type of files that you have. You can see I already have that under here, under kind, so I can see I have some WAV files that need to be could be converted to MP3s. So you get that by going into View Options and selecting the kind. By selecting that, I can then see what different tile formats I have. You can see I've got a lot of MP3s, but there are definitely some WAVs. So here's some stuff I recorded. These are field recordings. So I'll convert one of these to an MP3. So again, I'll go back into iTunes Preferences and Import Settings right here. Again, I'm on version, I believe this is 10. Each iTunes is going to be slightly different. You can see iTunes 10, but preferences, you're going to be looking for something that says this import settings. So I've chosen MP3. This is where then I can choose the settings for that. Now, I usually do things pretty high bit rate, and I also like variable bit encoding. So I'll select that also. You can see there's some other things you can select. I'll let you play with those. Generally, your things are going to keep everything stereo, keep it auto, unless you want to make a mono recording. Hit OK. That then is under the custom setting. You can see here what you pick. When you buy from the iTunes store, you are getting 128 kbps. I like a much higher quality, so I've added that. I'll hit OK, and I'll go OK. So then I'll select my file. There's 2 ways I can select it. One, I can right-click on it, and it can choose Create MP3 Version. I also can go to the Advanced tab and create MP3 version right there. So I'll do that for this file, and you can see up here it is converting. Now, once it's converted, it won't necessarily appear right next to my other one, and this gets very confusing for people. Where's my file? That lets me know it's done. I'm going to do a search now. Notice that it doesn't automatically look there. So a lot of people do it 2 or 3 times and they end up with multiple files. I'm going to do a search, and you can see here it is. Here's my MPEG, here's my WAV. If I right-click on that and get info, you can also see that it's an MPEG-1 layer 3. That's our MP3. If I get info on this, you can see that it is a WAV file. So nothing's changed about the duration. It now is an encoded. You can see the bit rate. It now is a lossless file, but it sounds pretty good, and obviously the size savings we love. And there's our file. A couple other tricks that are while you're in iTunes. If you want to say you want to burn that to a CD, you could drag it right to a playlist. You could create a new playlist and do some things of that nature. You can also, one of the tricks that I really like is the ability to find that file. So if I click on the file and right-click, Show in Finder is one of my favorite little tricks. And what will happen is the Finder will automatically take you right to that file. So for whatever reason, it's in the unknown artist. Why there's an ELO in the unknown artist? It sounds like it's known. But there's my MP3 and there's my WAV file. So they're both right next to each other in the Finder. Now if I drag that to the desktop,